we look at in terms of distance from the community, so where people live. We also look at plastic density in terms of distance from the road, usually from the national roads or where cars and other transportation will pass by, because that indicates habitation, no, and presence of people. And then distance from dense maritime. It means that if there are harbors and ports and fishing areas nearby, we also take note of them and see what are the plastic densities in here. And then, as you can see from these pictures, from these figures, there is a lot of plastic density incidents when the distance is much nearer to the community, to the road, and to the dense maritime places. So it means that plastics are heavily present where humans are, where activities, business, industry activities are, and where ecotourism and then fishing, port industries are also located. So this is a very good evidence to show that the presence of plastics in the environment is directly related to the people around that environment. Okay, and in terms of plastic type profiles for the different sites, we see here the violet or blue pictures would show the up to the red one. So this is the range of the proportion of plastics per area. So the red colors would show very high plastic proportions, and then the white ones would show around 0.20, 0.25 plastics per unit area. And then here we see the liter code and the type. This is based on the UN plastic liter code. So for example, PL1 would be bottle caps and lids, and PLO2 would be bottles less than 2 liters, and PLO3 bottles greater than 2 liters. So let's look at the red ones. So the red ones, like this one in the middle square, it means that in Carmen, so that's a study site where a lot of mangroves are also found. It has very high number and amount of PL24. What is PL24? These are other types of plastic-based waste like clothing, shoes, and hats. So this is very high in Carmen. Then another one in Pinamungahan area. This is also very high, but in terms of what? PLO3. PLO3 is about bottles. So it means that we can see a lot of plastic bottles greater than 2 liters in this area. Now let's look at the white one, because this means that they are in the middle part in this range, around 0.25 or so. So here in Mandaue city area, we have a very white one, so which corresponds to somewhere like 0.25 to 28 or so. Then PL24 are dominant in this area. What is PL24? Again, other of plastics like clothing, shoes. So from this picture, we could also categorize the plastic waste that we can see in the various mangrove sites around Cebu Island. Okay, now in terms of the relationship of the plastic loading, the mass base in terms of grams per unit area, or the count base in terms of the number of plastics per unit area, we can find a more or less moderate correlation here. Because the mass also, of course, corresponds to the count. So the more plastics you can see, we also expect higher weight of these plastics. However, this may change accordingly. It is not as really straightforward as a correlation, because the plastic densities largely vary across types of plastics. So the plastic densities can range from zero point 0.9 to 2.1. So sometimes you get to have big plastics in terms of size, but it has a lesser weight because it has lower density. And you could also find a smaller plastic, but it is heavy because it is of different type. No, but anyway, we could see a moderate correlation. So the more plastics we can see in terms of number, the mass would definitely increase in terms of kilograms or grams. So these are the pictures, some of the pictures that we can see along the study sites in the landward, the middle, and the seaward part. You can see here a very dense plastic litter along the mangrove sites in the seaward part, because now we can see that this is indeed that the mangroves are indeed trapping the plastic litter. So some conclusions and insights that we have found in this study. Mangrove sites are sinks of plastic waste, definitely. And I know that Indonesia is the largest mangrove country in the world. No, so you have the largest area of mangroves. I was able to visit the West Papua region in Indonesia, where there is something like a large amount, a number of mangrove concessions in the West Papua region. So I was able to visit that because these the mangrove trees are used as wood chips, no, and that is exported to other countries for use in paper making and so on. And the mangrove wood chips are actually have the type. So therefore, it is very favorable in terms of environmental outlook. How when we use mangrove trees for paper making. And then we also concluded that mangrove sites near human settlements tend to have greater plastic waste than those which are marine protected areas and do not have nearby communities. So this makes sense, of course, because plastics are generated by people, by local communities, and if these communities do not have proper waste management approaches, then these plastics would really end up in the mangrove sites. And of course, for academia, for researchers like us, there is a need for in-depth quantitative and qualitative characterization of plastic litter. Why this is important? Because our government officials will not listen to us if we do not present scientific evidence. And it is the duty of the academe and us as researchers to provide the scientific evidence that, hey, look, Mayor, Mr. President, Mr. Governor, this is what we see in our rivers and in our mangrove sites. So therefore, there is a need to draft policies and implement them to avoid this environmental problem. No? Okay, so how about the situation in Vidadado River? So I was told by Dr. Sonny about your very important river, which is very long and would end up in the marine environment. No, so the plastic waste that can end up in the marine environment through the flow of water in the river. So I took these pictures from Google.com on Vidadado River. So how do human settlements or communities drive plastic waste into Vidadado River and end up in mangrove sites along the marine or the beaches and the coastal areas of Indonesia and ultimately to the marine environment? So we have some learnings and insights based on our studies. And I think Philippines and Indonesia have very similar problems as far as waste and plastic waste are concerned. So number one, proper waste management is very important so that the river does not become a dumping site. So it is very common that the rivers are the dumping sites of our waste, no? And a lot of pictures can show this as evidence. Then there is a need to conduct studies on macro and microplastics profiling in the river. Why? Because again, these studies would prove as scientific evidence that this actually occur and this actually happen. No, studies on the presence of microplastics in river life, for example, the fish, the crabs, crustaceans, and whatever you can see in the river, then there is a need to do some studies because the fish and the crabs in the river may already feed on microplastics, the ones that degrade in time, no? And then, of course, we have mitigation measures. We need to identify and implement mitigation measures to reduce, if not eliminate, waste streams into the river. And then studies also are very important as basis for stricter policy implementation, as I have already told you. And then our government officials will never believe us unless and until we present them with scientific evidence. And of course, with pictures in the process, because you can see that the political, geographical, environmental, economic, sociocultural, and even legal aspects of this actually are very important in the conduct of the study and in successfully taking care of our environment. And then very important that we see also and we have realized in our study is that local community participation is very important, very significant in proper waste management. And then waste management approaches can be implemented or organized in the local communities along Vidadado River, for example, like recycling. So it could be upcycling, downcycling, doesn't matter, remanufacturing, repurposing the waste, especially the plastic waste, because this will never degrade quickly. So it takes hundreds, if not thousands of years to degrade this plastic waste. And probably also we can make use of this waste as fuel or as feedstock for energy generation. So there are a lot of possibilities as far as how waste are managed. Okay, so with that, I would like to thank our funder for this and you guys, all of you here, faculty and students and researchers who spent time listening to my presentation of the University of Chamber. Thank you so much, and I would be happy to hear from you and to hear your comments and if you have questions and suggestions. Thank you. Back to
Thank
you,
you very
Dr.
much.
Besad.
Okay, we applause to Professor Evelyn. Okay, thank you for Evelyn. And also today that my dean is Dr. Bambang Marhenanto, also Vice Dean, Dr. Ida Bagus, Suryaningrat, Vice Dean Administration and Finance, Ibu Sri Wayuni, Dr. Sri Wayuni, also attending today. And also most of his participants is a student, our student, Prof, and also our colleagues in my university, and also from my colleague university in Bali, Bali in
Yes.
around 3 hours from here. I believe that what is called also our colleagues, Prof, Dr. Kukuh, Robertus Kukuh is our group research. That our participant, that the participant is our group in the research between Japanese University, Philippines, and also Jember University. But our proposal still not yet succeed. Maybe next year about the Bedadung project, I believe with your range, Dr. Professor Evelyn, maybe the finance will be what is called pass from Japanese jury. Okay, thank you very much, Professor Evelyn. And I hope there are many questions from you for all participants. I give you to the students first, and after that for the lecture, also from my colleagues from Bali. Thank you very much. Please silakan adik-adik mahasiswa bisa menggunakan bahasa Indonesia or English. I'll try to translate to Professor Evelyn. Silakan adik-adik, silakan mau bertanya. Monggo, silakan. Sebutkan namanya.
Tolong di-unmute ya kalau ada mahasiswa.
Yeah.
For the student, you can raise your hand if you have any question. You can give the question in Bahasa Indonesia, then Pak Sony will translate in English. So it's okay. Maybe before the student asks, I would like to say that this is very interesting presentation, Professor. We have in Indonesia also same problem with in your study area about the plastic pollution. Yeah. So in Indonesia also we face the problem because we produce and use a lot of plastic for our daily life. So the question, is there any program or project regarding capacity building for the people around the area in the village or in the city for reduce the plastic use
Okay, okay. I think it's your question, Dr. Ida, because I'm moderator. I will try to arrange the meeting. Is it your question or not?
This is my question.
Okay. I think it's a shorter question. Okay, please. After this,
Okay.
Can you answer?
Yeah,
this?
I can answer Doc Sony because it was in English, so no problem. So yes, it is very interesting that we have both countries the same problems, especially in dealing with the local communities. And so I mentioned, of course, you can have your own locally initiated activities to raise awareness on the problems of plastics, but we have also like EU and ASEAN collaboration. So Dr. Sani mentioned that earlier that I'm also a senior expert serving in the EU ASEAN initiative for green technologies dialogue and innovation mapping. So what does it mean? It means that the one of the works there, the one of the three important or major pillars in the work there is that we have to create awareness for local communities, for industries, business, for government, and for academia about the issues, the global concern on plastics, and how each one of us can actually contribute to the solutions of this waste problem. So I invited at some point Dr. Sunny in our webinar series, but in the near future, we could also organize something like this webinar series wherein we invite local government units or local communities showcasing their ways on how to create awareness for plastic waste. So we can actually do that. So of course, later on, we can arrange this Dr. Sunny, so that we can also showcase this type of activities and really implement them in your local communities.
Thank you very much.
So I also have seen here some questions. If I can read it, Professor Sunny. So okay, so we have here from Sri Wajuni Singh.
Yeah, this is the Vice Dean of Affair, Economic and Finance Affair. Yes.
Okay, so thank you, sir.
Sri, Dr. Sri.
Okay, Miss, Madam. Thank you, Madam. Sorry.
Madam Sri.
Yes. Okay. The question is, what are the advantages and disadvantages about mass-based and count-based approach for microplastic waste management? A very good question, Madam, because okay, the importance here is that if you only account for the number of plastics, it may be misleading because you may count more numbers, but they are in small amounts. Whereas if together with the number you also quantify the mass or the weight, then you would see that okay, if I then these two parameters would actually balance each other, because you in one area you may found 10 plastics, so the count is 10, but the mass would be 5 because they have lesser densities. But in other areas, you may found only 6 number of plastics, but the total weight is 20, for example, because then these waste are
Uh, since you mentioned about the local community participation in to reduce the waste, especially in the along the river, right? Along the river, about
yes.
the waste of the plastic. So, can you give me some examples? What is the action actually that already done by the community who live along the river to reduce the waste of the plastic? That is
Okay.
the first question. And then the second thing said that you also mentioned about the mitigation to mitigation reduce the waste, right?
Yes, yes.
And what is the indicator to measure that the waste of the plastic it already what's that the number of the waste of the plastic is already reduced or something like that. Thank you,
Okay.
Prof.
Okay, thank you very much for those interesting questions. So I would like to show you some pictures. Okay, all right. So the first question would be the approaches of the local communities. So in Cebu, what we do is to already show pictures like these pictures that I have shown you here. No, evidently this is very visual evidence that plastic waste are present in the area. So we meet with the local officials, the mayor, the barangay, or the village official, and ask them and tell them that hey, we have found so much waste in the marine environment or in the mangroves or in this, and then we also took pictures of the plastics that are just gathered just there and then not being properly managed and collected. So we tell them and then how they would solve the problem. And then one important aspect is that they would now collect their waste properly and then also send their waste properly to the collectors. No, so
Okay.
it will not be just
Spread out.
found all around, spread out in the
Yeah.
environment. So that's one. The other one is that we encourage them to collect their waste in certain center and then segregate their waste. So they have what we call the materials recovery facility, MRF. So in the materials recovery facility, people are asked to segregate the waste into like cans or glasses or carton or paper, biodegradable waste, and then also plastics, bottles, and so on. And so from there, they could actually get some cash from this waste because they can sell it as scraps. We have also
Mm-hmm.
buyers of these scraps. And then there is also now in Cebu, we are organizing what we call a plastic buyback store. So there is an organization which we tap to put in some stores along. So you see the whole island, around the
Mm-hmm.
islands, we identify different sites where stores, plastic buyback stores are located and these stores would actually collect and receive plastics from the community, and then in exchange for cash. Community, when you reduce or eliminate waste, of course, from then tomorrow, this is cleaned up already, and these are gone. Then that would be the reduction and elimination of waste. So that's one. And then I talked to you about the plastic stores or the plastic buyback stores. So if the plastic buyback more plastic, so meaning there the good indicator that the communities are practicing the plastic waste, and then have it sold in the plastic buyback stores. So these are some of the indicators, but really you can see it in the environment along the way, or and so on, how the waste are actually reduced and eliminated.
Okay, Prof.
Thank you.
Okay, there's one question in chatting rooms. There's a question is like our proposal last time.
Yes.
What the experiences in Vidadado River. This is from Mr. Agus Terawan. Is about asking about the does the pressure of plastic levels, macro and microplastic, is what the effect physiological and chemical processing in plant. Perhaps can be informed about this. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for this interesting question also. Yes, the first one is that if we follow the flow of the food chain, plastics degrade in time, no? And then when they degrade in time, I'll show you the picture that I have that I have shown early on, which is the schematic diagram of how we do this. For example, this, okay? So as you can see here, from the big waste streams, bottles, for example, representing plastics, they are flowing into the sea, and they are actually sometimes trapped, or not sometimes, often trapped, for example, in mangrove plants to represent the plants, and then they are degraded at the same time, and then they are now converted into microplastics, meaning small size plastics, less than 5 millimeter. When this happens, then this can easily be assimilated in by the fish, no? So the fish will easily, or the crustaceans and whatever marine life you have, they are easily eaten by this, and actually these are toxic for this marine species. So that's number one. Second is that you were referring to plants. Now, since plastics from our spectroscopic analysis, the plastics, they are polymers, the long chain polymers, they are degraded into small chain compounds, and until they are degraded into small compounds, which are assimilated and become part of the biochemical pathway for plants, in the metabolic pathway for plants. And then in other words, this can also be assimilated by plants, which actually cause toxicity. So therefore, plants would also, in the end, in time, will die or will be affected because of the presence of plastics. So for example, one of the manifestations of this is that in our study sites, we have seen that the more plastics we see in the mangrove sites, the mangroves are actually becoming unhealthy, meaning there are just a few of them, and then not so many green leaves, and they are almost dying, and so on and so forth, which are manifested by the presence of toxic compounds that are caused by the presence of plastics and the degradation of plastics. So thank you,
Okay,
Dr.
thank you very
Soning.
much.
Up to you.
Okay, so one question more from Dr. Elida, is an expert in environment. She asked for that G pastel, I don't know, the analysis to carry out in analyzing the impact of plastic waste in mangrove areas. Would you explain, Prof, more what G pastel analysis look like, that like in holistic approach? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for this very good question also. Now, I've shown here the GPESO analysis. Yes, this is the same with systems approach, because the systems approach is also holistic. However, the systems approach is a little bit more generalized as compared to GPESO analysis, no? Because GPESO analysis would look at, again, geographical, political, environmental, sociocultural, technological, legal, and economic factors. And each of the factors would have key performance indicators, or indicators or measurements, measurement indicators, how we are going to express this. So for example, geographical. What is the nature of the area geographically? Is it straight along the coastline, or are there also some curves, like areas where these plastics would also settle and collect itself, no? And then sociocultural as another example would be, how do the local communities in a given area behave as far as waste management is concerned? So are they just or into
Start.
Now full with plastic waste? This is my first question. For my second question, maybe it is possible to burn plastic waste, because I think this is a easy method to release the plastic waste in the world. This is a second question. And the last, maybe you have a concern about the edible packaging research, so that we can collaborate, because